Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank all of you for your testimony. I just want to pick up on the broadband deployment point. I heard as Senator Bennett was talking, or I saw most of you nodding your heads saying that broadband deployment was essential to economic development in rural areas. Do you all agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. And would you all agree that we've still got a lot of work to do to make sure that we have adequate deployment to meet the economic needs of rural America?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I wanted to raise with you the issue that's pending right now before the FCC. They have a 706 inquiry. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir, I am.
Inquiry? Because I've been hearing a lot about this from rural parts of my state, and the gist of that inquiry is whether or not, for the purposes of determining whether we have adequate broadband deployment in rural areas, or any area, we can say that wireless deployment is good enough and that we don't also have to look at the deployment of fixed broadband. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The National Rural Electric Cooperative Association is one of many that have filed comments in that case. And on page 2 of their filing, they just state flat out, quote, "The Commission," meaning the FCC, "should continue to assess fixed and mobile broadband separately in determining whether advanced communications capabilities are being deployed to all Americans in a reasonable and timely fashion." Do you agree with that statement?
Yes.
You do. So my question now is whether or not the Department of Agriculture has weighed in or commented as well before the FCC with respect to the proposal that's pending, the 706 inquiry.
So I will defer to Ms. Hazlett, who to be able to answer on.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. I'm not aware of this issue, but will certainly be happy to follow up today. Secretary Perdue has placed a top priority on broadband deployment and connectivity in America, and we'll be happy to get you that information.
Well, let me, okay.
Senator,
yeah.
let me, if I may, address that point. We have not filed as a petitioner with the FCC. We have an ongoing dialogue with the FCC. And the Secretary of Agriculture is chairing the Agriculture and Rural Prosperity Task Force, which the chairman of the FCC is a member. And there, I can report that broadband is a key focus of that effort. And that dialogue, although not proceeding as a formal petition, is ongoing between the executive branch agencies.
Okay, well, I would just say if the and I took the Secretary at his word as well that he's engaged in these issues, but if he's not fully aware and engaged with what's happening at the FCC, the grants that are provided by the Department of Agriculture, the rural telecommunication loans and the rural broadband loans and grants, they're all very important. But what's happening in the FCC could have a even bigger impact on the deployment of broadband in rural areas. And that is why you've got the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association and all others weighing in. So I'm going to ask you ask you whether or not the Department of Agriculture will weigh in with the FCC and let them know that the position of the Department of Agriculture is to not count wireless deployment as a total substitute for fixed deployment. There are huge differences between the two in terms of the capabilities and the costs. So I know you can't answer that today, but I would like the Department of Agriculture to get back to us, to get back to me, and let me know if you're willing to weigh in formally on this issue, because everyone says, and I believe you, that you care about broadband deployment. This action before the SEC is going to have a really big impact on the future of broadband deployment in rural areas. Thank you.